Houston, we have a podcast. Welcome to the official podcast of the NASA Johnson Space Center, Episode 5, Astronaut Training. I'm Gary Jordan, and I'll be your host today. So this is the podcast where we bring in the experts, NASA scientists, engineers, astronauts, all to tell you the coolest things about NASA. So today we're talking about astronaut training with Randy Bresnik, known by his colleagues as Comrade. He's a U.S. astronaut here at the NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Well, actually, he's in space right now. He just launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome and arrived at the International Space Station last week, July 28th, to start his long-duration spaceflight. But before he launched, I had a chance to chat with him, and we had a great discussion about what astronauts have to study, know, and endure to be successful in space. So with no further delay, let's go light speed and jump right ahead to our talk with Mr. Randy Bresnik. Enjoy.
T-minus 5 seconds and counting. Mark. Launch commit lights are correct. Here she goes.
Houston, we have a podcast.
All right, well, thanks for coming, Randy. I know you had some back-to-back stuff going on today, so I appreciate you taking actually the time to sit down and talk with me for just a little bit. And so close to your launch, too. I know, like, it's going to be pretty busy up until the time that you actually are in space. And maybe by the time this podcast actually gets launched, you actually be there, so this will be kind of appropriate with how busy and how quickly things are moving. So today, kind of wanted to talk about astronaut training, you know, what you have to go through in order to prepare yourself to go to space, and there's just so much. It has to be so diverse. Not only do you have to be a jack of all trades, but you have to be sort of like a master of all of them. I did want to start off with, though, first of all, I'm reading your name here. It's Randy Comrade Bresnik. What's the story behind Comrade?
It's a call sign from the Marine Corps. I come from the fighter community where I was flying F-18s, and typically we've always historically given call signs to people. You know, go back to World War II, Pappy Boyington. You know, these are nicknames that people had. Indian Joe Bauer. You know, was a squadron commander back when the squadron I was in, was in World War II. Mm-hmm. And so we have these call signs, and so you get one either for your name or for something you've done stupid. And so. Example that makes it really easy for people to understand is there's a guy who's in training command. He's out there doing carrier quals for the first time, and when you're on the catapult, getting ready to get launched off the bow of the ship, those things accelerate you from 0 to 150 knots in under 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. And so you are going flying because this thing has so much mechanical power.
Yeah.
Well, he kept his feet on the brakes. The brakes were not going to hold the aircraft carrier from launching him, and so catapult launches, the brakes, the brakes he was holding, the tires blow, and so he ended with the call sign Bam Bam. And so I didn't have anything that had stuck until I got to the F-18 training squadron, and I'm going on my first flight with a Marine instructor, and he asked if I had call sign. I said, hey, they give me this, that, and he said, no, those all stink. I'll think of something. And so we go flying in the F-18. I had an amazing time. I was the plane I always wanted to fly. It was just a phenomenal airplane. And you come back in the debrief, and we're done. He goes, all right, I have a call sign for you. I'm like, okay, knowing that these things can stick. He goes, Bresnik. That sounds like Brezhnev. We're going to call you Comrade Brezhnev. And that was it. And I, here I am quite a few decades later and haven't done anything stupid to get a new one.
Brezhnev after the Soviet leader and
Leonid Brezhnev.
Okay, and
yes.
I guess everyone called each other comrade as like a.
Yeah, during Soviet times, that was how everybody addressed themselves.
Okay, I get the reference now. So just as a little bit of background, but you're Navy and Marines, is that correct? I
am the overall arching is naval aviator, which includes the Navy and the Marine Corps aviators. We wear the same wings on our we earn the same wings in flight school. We wear the same wings on our.
Okay, so when you talk about launching off of carriers and the Marines, so that's
right. That's part of our overall naval aviator training. So I was trained to launch off an aircraft carrier, launched off a T2, A4, and an F-18. But then as a Marine, we deploy expeditionarily. That's not even a word.
We'll make it a word.
Or expedition-based, where we will launch and establish forward bases and fly out of there instead of just flying just off the aircraft carrier.
Okay. Now, you're going to be launching soon, or if depending on when this podcast is released, you're in space right now. But this is not your first rodeo, right? You've been in space before. You launched in 2009 on STS-29 aboard Atlantis. How was that?
STS-129 was really neat. I had fortunate to have a really great crew. We had 2 Marine test pilots, we had 2 Navy test pilots, and we had 2 smart guys. Our smart guys, Leland Melvin, here he is. He had been drafted into the NFL, playing football, but had a career-ending injury. But he had finished his education, and so he went back, got his master's, became a NASA engineer, and then became an astronaut.
Awesome.
And then because we had the 2 Marines, he needed to raise the average IQ on the flight, and so we had Bobby Satcher, who is MIT, PhD in chemical engineering, and that wasn't enough, so he went to Harvard and became a medical doctor as well, as an oncologist, and so he was there to, try and make us all look good. And great guys. Butch Wilmore, myself, and Bobby were all first-time flyers, but the other 3 experienced crew were phenomenal mentors and taught us how to do what we needed to do while we were in training. So when we were able to go to space, we were able to execute very well, and hit all the tasks we needed to during the mission, and call it a success.
Now, compared to like International Space Station missions now, I mean, we're talking about 6 months-ish on the space station. This was relatively short, right? Just over 10 days aboard. So, I mean, you really had to soak it all in for those 10 days.
And it is, we say the shuttle flights were a sprint and the station flight is a marathon.
Right.
For a shuttle flight, you train for every minute of that flight because it's all, once you launch, you've got every minute of every day, chock full of events.
Right.
And so you're able to practice and rehearse that. Whereas space station, we don't have that luxury. You don't know what you're doing next week because something may break or something may change or the priorities may, be adjusted. And so we do skills-based training so that if I can do this particular task, well, I can do 100 tasks like that.
And this is for the space station,
For
right?
space station.
Yeah.
And so we do this skills-based training, so I've got skills in all these different areas, and we'll see how that skill will be put to use in maybe 10 or 20, 30 different areas during those 6 months, but I don't sit there and rehearse what I'm doing daily.
Right. So when you were on the shuttle, you did 2 EVAs, right? So you rehearsed those, and you had a lot of experience with exactly what you were doing. This was in the Nutribuoyancy Laboratory.
The Nutribuoyancy Lab, the world's largest swimming pool, 6 million gallons of water.
A lot of water.
The whole space station's underneath it. We used to have the shuttle in there when we were flying shuttle.
Right.
And I don't know why I'm talking with my hands, because there's a podcast, but it's just a pilot thing.
You look good when you're doing it. I can justify that.
And we rehearsed each EVA 6 to 7 times. I mean, every single time, exactly what we're doing, we do it very well. And here I am, Monday, I'm going for my last NBL run here before the flight. And, we've done a handful of runs of a bunch of different types of skills, not knowing if I'll do any of those particular things I rehearsed or I'll be doing stuff I completely did not rehearse. But I've got a wide enough skill base to be able to do anything that's comes that we end up having to have happen, either planned or unplanned.
Yeah, I mean, I hear a lot of times that you go into the Nutribuoyancy Laboratory and it kind of becomes almost muscle memory. You kind of know where you're going. You know the lay of the land a little bit.
That's the whole point.
Yeah,
that's with any of the training we do. Space is such a unique environment physically because your body's feeling the weightlessness, visually because you're seeing the whole Earth go underneath you, and especially when you're outside in that spacesuit, your own personal spacecraft, and especially when you're underneath and you're holding on to something and you look down and your whole life has told you, wow, there's nothing between me and the Earth but my boots. And that's 200 miles. If I let go, I'm going to fall because your whole life has taught you that here on Earth.
Yeah.
And it's a physical thing you have to overcome. And so to be able to have the muscle memory to go, I go to this spot. I put my tether here. I pull out this piece of equipment. You can just rely on that and get to the comfortability of the training. Then you're able to not have it be such an overwhelming or physically, stressful event.
Okay. Well, so one cool thing about your 2 EVAs is something happened in between there. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I left Earth with my wife and son watching, and my daughter, who was 9 months in the womb at the time. And the funny thing is that the morning of that launch, we strap in. The weather was iffy, and really it was getting to the point where a few minutes before launch, up until 15 minutes before launch, our commander, who had the best view, was kind of going, yeah, it's not looking so good, guys. And so we started kind of getting prepared that, hey, we might actually scrub. And we're hearing the calls over the radio, and the guy who's the weather STA pilot said, hey, there's a hole that's coming over, here, and and we came out of the 9-minute hold because there's a hole that was just aligning with the weather-wise to allow us to launch. And we came out of the 9-minute hold. It's like, we're going. It's like, wow, that's great. But at that point, I knew that, hey, I wasn't going to be around for the birth of our daughter.
Right.
And so we launched. We get going on the mission. We got docked to the space station. We knock out our first spacewalk. I'm the IV, or the guy being the basically the director, of the two guys out there on the EVA. Mm-hmm. And the plan was, just because she had to be induced, they were going to have her deliver the next day, before my first EVA. And so they induced my wife, and Abigail didn't come out.
Oh.
She did not come. And so we wake up the next morning, and I'm expecting to wake up the morning of my first EVA and find out that my wife gave birth. Well, she's still in labor. That's not good. And so, but, the EVAs happen, and we practiced it these 6 times, and the mission's got to go. So I had to, compartmentalize and go, okay. And we had the thing. Once we start, getting prepped for the EVA, that, whatever happens, I don't find out about it until we actually come back in the door. So get suited up, do our work, go out the door for my first EVA. Think about it afterwards. I was kind of expecting when I came back in, that to hear that she would have been born. And just think, wow, what are the odds that I'm outside on a spacewalk at the same time my wife's, giving birth to our daughter. And so we come back in, get put on the rack, and they pull off our helmet. I'm like, oh,
is she born?
Nothing.
Is she born? No.
Still in labor.
No.
So I'm feeling really bad for my wife. I mean, just that's something us men just really don't understand, and to have it go that long, I know is just very painful, and unfortunately it was. But in the end, she got to be there and give birth to our daughter, and so that night, go to sleep, and expecting to hear, in the morning that our daughter was born. I ended up having to get up to use the facilities the middle of the night, and I saw it was a KU band pass, so I quick call down and get a hold of her sister on the cell phone, and she's like, we're still in labor.
Still. Oh, my God.
So I... they were pretty busy down there, so I just kind of put the phone down on the table next to in the delivery room, and so I was able to hear the sounds of the delivery room, until the KU pass went down, and turns out she was born about 20 minutes after the KU pass ended.
No,
so,
you just missed it.
So when I got up the next morning, the morning wake-up song was the song "Butterfly Kisses" that my wife had picked out as the song to play the morning our daughter's born.
So you knew.
That's
you knew
that's
about
how
the
I knew,
song.
but I hadn't heard from my wife yet. So they're playing the song. Does that mean it happened? So a few minutes later, they patched my wife through and was able to talk to her.
That is amazing. Talk about, you use the word compartmentalize. That, I can't even imagine. You're like, you're so concerned about your wife, and you're like, but I have this EVA to do, and I need to focus.
The whole, our whole shuttle crew and our whole, STS-129 team and our whole space program got us to that point to do that EVA, to, do this construction stuff.
Right.
And, there's not failure's not an option. You got to focus. And then certainly when you're outside in your own personal spacesuit or spacecraft, in the most inhospitable, location known to man, because it's, plus 250 degrees in the sun and minus 250 degrees in the shade, there's no, margin for error. And so you have to compartmentalize. And so that was, as a pilot and a test pilot, that was the most, the culmination of my career. I'm in space. Now I'm going on a spacewalk. This is unbelievable. And the view was just indescribably beautiful. And then the very next day to have something surpass that was just, very fortunate, very blessed to be able to have experienced that.
Wow.
I wish I could have been there for my wife and been there at the delivery. But, that was not the plan for us. And so we were just, given grace, we were able to do our jobs in respective areas of the planet or off planet, and good news after that. And then the next day, waiting the whole day, waiting until I could finally see pictures and get a little video sent to me. And then a few minutes after that, I was able to actually get on a two-way video conference with my wife and see her and hear her little voice. And that was, pretty special. But literally, my commander was at the Node 2, waiting until I finished, kind of tapping his watch, because as soon as I hung up from that video conference, I had to float down into the airlock and closed the hatch, and Bobby Satcher and I had to depress for down to 10.2 psi for the overnight camp out to get the nitrogen out of our bodies for the EVA the next day, where now I'm the EV1, I'm the lead for the spacewalk.
Oh,
so
wow.
back to the compartmentalized to the last spacewalk of the flight.
Wow. All right,
So-
my daughter's born. That's cool. Okay, now I got to go.
I-
That's just what you have to do. And then that was, I guess, overnight purging. They don't do that anymore, right? They just
We don't. We do it called in-suit light exercise.
I see.
Where we're able to use less overall oxygen from the station to be more efficient with the oxygen that we have up there.
Ah, makes sense. Okay. Well, so now you're gearing up for a 6-month journey. So tell us a little bit about sort of the training that has to go, I guess a little bit. How is it different in general from shuttle training? But just what all do you have to do to prepare yourself? Like what kinds of training does an astronaut have to do to be up there for 6 months?
Certainly there's a lot of, station training because there's, you're up there for so much and you got to be able to do everything. You've got to be able to execute the payloads and experiments. At the same time, you've got to be able to do the Earth's observation. You've got to be able to do the events to talk to people down here on the Earth and share the experience. On top of being the janitor, you got to clean up the vents and wipe down the handrails and make sure the station is in a clean situation.
Yeah.
We've got to be able to fix things that break. The toilet breaks. You're not calling the plumber. You are the plumber. You are the scientist. You are the plumber. You are the fix-it repairman.
Yeah.
And so that's what a lot of the training is like we talked about with the skills-based stuff is how do I go ahead and fix this particular type of thing? How do I work this type of fitting, which is on 100 different pieces of equipment, but I know how to work that fitting.
I see.
Important stuff like our regenerative ECLIS systems, the environmental control and life support, the oxygen generator, the carbon dioxide scrubber, those types of things are really
learn how to
important
fix
to
that.
station.
Yeah.
And so we got to learn in depth how to fix those if they break.
Right.
That's the stuff that really we're proving. ISS is the proving ground for exploration because
Right.
when we launch to Mars, we can't have spares sent up. We can't just, if there's a problem, just deorbit and come back to Earth, in a couple hours. We got to have it all there. It's all got to work, and it's got to keep working for years at a time to be able to get there, do our mission, and then come back.
Yeah.
And so we're proving those technologies now.
That's amazing.
And with the current time where we don't have the shuttle and we don't have our Starliner or our Dragon crewed vehicles yet, our only way to space is through our Russian partners.
That's right,
And
Soyuz.
so 60% of the time of my last year and a half has been in Russia, training to launch, rendezvous, dock, and then land on the Soyuz.
So what's your role on the Soyuz then?
On the Soyuz, I'm in the left seat,
I see.
or they call the flight engineer.
Okay.
And so my Russian crewmate Sergei Rozansky is in the center seat. He's the commander of the Soyuz. And so between the two of us, we work and run all the systems within the Soyuz. And then our flight engineer number 2, now, because we've changed crews a little bit here recently,
Right.
Paolo Nispoli from Italy. And so the three of us will be launching July 28th.
So 60% of your time, I guess you said for the past year and a half, has been over there. Wow,
Yeah.
it must be a complicated system then, right? So,
It's complicated. There's also the Russian segment training that we get because that's a good half a station. We typically don't work down there daily, but especially since I'll be the commander of the ISS for Expedition 53, I kind of need to know what's going on in the whole station. So we
Yeah.
get training so that I can be helpful to those guys, know what's going on, and then if necessary, make decisions based on the health of the entire space station.
that's awesome. So what kind of, you're there for so long, what are you going over? Are you going over mostly how to work the thing? Or, if this goes wrong, this is what, like emergency situations?
Mostly that, and that's the
Oh,
same
I
thing
see.
because it's a dynamic flying vehicle. That's the dangerous part of the mission. And then same thing with shuttle. We did so many sims just for ascent, entry, and landing, and fortunately, the majority of that training that we got, we never had to use. But if you had to use it, your life depended on it. And it was very time critical. So that's why constant rehearsal over those things.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that you're in Russia and doing this stuff in Russian. There's a little bit extra margin that you have to add for that because it's not one of the easier languages.
I hear that's one of the more difficult parts of training is Russian language. I mean, you're right. It's very difficult. I'm starting training here in the next couple of weeks, and I'm nervous. I'm very nervous. So I mean, being an astronaut, though, it's not just, flying the vehicles and fixing stuff. You have to be in tip-top shape, right? There's a physical element to it. Every astronaut is just in super good. Do you guys have do you have physical requirements? Like, so you have to work out this much time, or even medical. Do you have to learn how to, in case of an emergency, patch someone up or anything like that?
All right, so sounds like two questions there.
I guess it is two
yes,
questions.
Yeah, certainly the workout point. The better shape your body is in, the better it will be able to respond and adapt to zero gravity, and then maintain itself when it doesn't have gravity to help keep your bones strong and your muscles strong and all that. So that's certainly one of the bigger concerns about leaving, our Van Allen radiation belt, which protects us here, in low Earth orbit and on the planet, and going to far-off destinations. How do we protect the physical body of the crew so that when they get to somewhere, they can do the exploration that we want to do? So there's a lot of, obviously, the protected from radiation, there's protected from zero gravity,
right.
And we do have a lot of countermeasures now, and that's why space station and being up there for 6 months gives us really good insight, is to do, since you don't get the, the sun, can we up your vitamin D? Can we get the certain diet? Can we have the proper exercise with aerobic and anaerobic exercise to keep the body from deteriorating in zero G, which it would normally do. They say that being up there is like a person having osteoporosis, and so you can't just do nothing. Otherwise, you come back in bad shape, having lost a lot of bone.
So you train how to use the, workout equipment.
Right, the workout equipment, which is amazing. The advanced resistive exercise device is a phenomenal piece of equipment that does all kinds of different stuff, and people are coming back, in better shape, than they leave sometimes. Part of it's the fact that we have to dedicate a couple hours every day to working out. Your body,
right.
Here on Earth, standing up and sitting down out of a chair, getting out of bed, getting in your car, walking to to work. Those little things that you do, even if you're not, quote, exercising like we would think, your still body's moving. In space, you're floating around. You're not doing anything difficult all day long. So that's the only exercise you really get.
Yeah, because otherwise there would be that kind of natural deterioration. Yeah. We had an episode beforehand where we talked with John and Charles, where if your body doesn't need your bones and muscles because it's not using it as much, then your body says, all right, we don't need to put any energy towards that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and then the medical question,
right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doctors there, so we trained to, kind of like you have, telemedicine and things like that are really, technology is really allowing us to do well now these days. We're the eyes and ears, for the doctor. We're like space EMTs. We can do the initial triage, and we train for somebody who's not breathing or somebody's had, they don't have a heartbeat. We can take care of all that stuff on orbit, stabilize them, and then get the docs involved, and then figure out how to do follow-on treatment or, if necessary, for a medical emergency evacuation on the space station.
And you guys are running through these procedures kind of repetitively, I would assume, right?
Yeah, got to build the muscle memory.
Yeah.
And fortunately we got great procedures and great training that allows it to be where, okay, we can get the person to here by stuff that we've, learned and memorized, and then we open up the procedure and go, okay, here's where we're at, and then we can sync up with the ground and go, here's what's next. Hey, doc, you got any other idea? Here's a video camera picture of the patient. Here's what we're seeing. Okay, we all agree. Let's, let's give them this particular, medicine or something like that they need. So it's really a group effort.
I'm imagining, I was a lifeguard in way back in high school, and I'm imagining just kind of like that, but just a million times more complicated, because it's the same thing, right? You're sitting and watching a pool, but every once in a while something goes wrong and you got to know what to do. Yeah. So you have kind of a unique set of experiences. Not only are you an astronaut, but you are an aquanaut and a caveanaut. I want to start with a caveanaut. What is a caveanaut? What did you do in a cave? I guess you lived in a cave, right?
We did. The European Space Agency back in 2011 started this expeditionary and extreme environment training called CAVES.
Okay.
And they originally planned it as kind of a cooperative behavior thing, kind of more of a, how do you get along with people and, put the astronauts all together and put them in little stressful situations and see how they evolve and how they, the personality skills and that kind of stuff. And it was in the caves, the vast underground cave systems in Sardinia, Italy, which is an island off the west coast of the main body of Italy.
Okay.
And so you start out, just like with any training, with basic caving stuff and rappelling and climbing. And then you went to spend a day where you're in these really narrow caves where it's really whining about getting lost and navigation and being able to go through squeezes and navigating through tiny, areas of the cave to overcome any claustrophobia or anything like that. And then on a day we do the whole cave photography and how to map out and allow us to make maps from the data we collect in the caves, from laser range fires, how big's the room, what shape is it, how was the inclination. Put that all together to the final exercise, which is a week underground. And you head in a kilometer and a half from the opening of the cave, and that's where the base camp was. And we're in this tens of kilometers long cave, and there was a point where the maps ended, and our job was to go out every day and map out new parts of the cave. So we decided what hole, dark spot to go into and check out and see if that was a dead end or see if that was somewhere to go, and go back and further into the cave and go through it's amazing going through a tiny area, kind of like squeezing through a toilet seat almost, and opening up to a cathedral-sized room underground. You're going, holy, I'm underground.
Whoa.
Look at this huge area. There were no trails, no lights, no guardrails.
Right, because you're mapping it. You're discovering
You're mapping it. You figure very few humans have ever seen this.
Right.
And it's unlike anything you've ever seen on the earth or seen pictures of. I mean, it's just, and so you got this real feeling for exploring. You go, okay, we're excited. Hey, we know we can go this way or that way. Let's go that way today, and let's go see what's over there.
That's so cool.
And so it was really, really an enjoyable thing to do with these other people, these other astronauts who are just as excited about this exploring too, and really applicable to what we do in space, because what they found from doing this caves exercise is that there's a lot more space applications than they thought, because in space you don't know what time it is, because every 45 minutes you get a sunrise and then a sunset, and that goes happen 16 times a day.
Right.
Well, in a cave, it's dark all the time, so you never know what time it is. So you could just be marching along, doing stuff, and realize, oh, my, why do I feel tired? Oh, I've been up for 20 hours, I forgot to eat, because I didn't have, it's lunchtime,
Yeah, you kind of have to just, make up almost a biological clock because you don't have the sun.
Like I said, there's no guardrails, there's no paths.
Yeah.
There is a definite apparent fear of death. You could be doing stuff where you're attached onto a guideline, and it could be 200 feet. If you take a slip and you're not attached, you're 200 feet. I mean, it's very much like being in space, where if you're on a spacewalk and something goes wrong and you're not tethered properly, it's a bad day.
Wow. Once you got set up and I guess on base camp, did you light up everything so you can see a little bit, or was it pretty much?
You had your helmet light. That was it.
That was it. The entire time. And
you got used to it, and that was pretty neat. And so that was made photography really interesting, because what you would do is you'd put the thing on manual, you'd open the shutter, and then you'd take a flash and you'd hit it a couple of different times and just point it at different areas of the cave, trying to not point it at the camera, but kind of shield it with your body, so you could light up different stuff. So it's kind of like painting by the numbers. You're just painting with lights, with the flash, or even flashlights. You could actually do squiggles and write words with the flashlight of what it was showing on places.
Wow.
And so you then close the shutter and see what showed up on the screen to see what you got, because you couldn't tell, because there's just flash and lights moving all around during the picture, and then you look to see what it all amalgamated to at the end.
That's
really
amazing.
neat.
Wow. I guess, what was it like seeing the sun for the first time after being there for so long?
It was really bright, and was in the cave with Thomas Pesquet and Tim Peake, and when we came out, Thomas was like, the sky's a different blue. They changed the blue. It was just so vibrant. And the other thing that was so amazing was that the sights and sounds and smells in the cave are all very much the same. And we came out after that week, and literally you could smell every bush and the dirt and the grass. I mean, it's just shocking. It's just so sensory overload with your smell.
Yeah, because I guess your body adapted to not
having it.
Yeah.
And so very much like you hear people come back from space station, where you don't have the fresh smells or the breeze from the wind that modulates. You have the constant breeze of the air ducts in the ventilation system, and certainly the smells get pretty standard up there. And you come back and you just feeling the grass under your toes and this and that. I mean, we're supposed to be landing in December. I'm sure snow will have a smell when I come back. Going, that's fresh snow. That's awesome.
Okay, so we have like one more minute, but I did want to ask. I would want to follow up about the Aquanaut experience, what it was like to live underwater.
That was amazing too, because I've been scuba diving for years, and I just loved how unique that environment is, and the wildlife underneath there. And the Aquarius habitat right now is the only thing on the planet where people can go live underwater.
Wow.
There's actually been less aquanauts, people that have spent more than 24 hours underwater, than there have been astronauts.
Oh.
And so that's pretty interesting fact.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is, again, like the caves, there's an apparent fear of death. I mean, you're 40 feet underwater, but once you're saturated, that's not safety. Something goes wrong with your equipment. You can't just do an emergency ascent. Going to the surface will kill you.
Yeah.
You have to get back inside, and we have to use the habitat as a hyperbaric chamber.
Wow.
And so you got to figure out what's going on. And so buddy checks, checking your gear, just like we do on spacewalk, very important. Knowing where your buddy is and what he's doing in case you have a problem, you can go over somewhere and buddy breathe. Things like that have to be in your mind the whole time you're doing a simulated spacewalk on the underground, and then be able to live underwater and see the cycles of the fish and what fish were active at daylight, what fish were active at nighttime, and just seeing that whole thing unfold around you every day just made it a really amazing experience. And you're in this habitat that's the size of like a school bus, and there's 6 of you living and working for a week, and you got to figure out how to get over any individual issues you might have and be able to be an effective member of the team. And between those different extreme environments, the hope is that when someone finally gets a chance to go to space, that it's just one of many extreme environment things that they can add to their repertoire, and it's not such a huge overall assault on their senses and their physical being, because they've been in extreme places before. This is just one more rather than the first one they see.
Yeah, it sounds like you're taking little things from each experience. For the Cavenaut, you're taking, adjusting your biological clock. From Aquanaut, you're taking, the camaraderie and buddy checks, making sure everyone's okay. And just, obviously there's got to be more, but just that whole round experience makes you like truly a knot. I don't know, an all knot? I'm making up words here. Anyway. Well, comrade, thank you for coming on the show. I know you're a very busy man, so just best of luck to your mission. Maybe by the time this is up here, you'll already be up there. So again, best of luck to you. For the listeners, if you want to stay tuned till after the music here, we'll tell you how you can follow Comrade on his journey. He's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, if I'm correct, right?
Correct.
All right, so we'll tell you about that after the show. So thanks again, Comrade.
My pleasure, and good luck with the podcast.
Thanks.
Dock of the space shuttle.
Roger, 0G, and I feel
Shuttle has cleared the
Became
tower.
a theme for all mankind.
Actually a huge honor to break a record like this.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Never keeps to. Welcome to space.
Hey, thanks for sticking around. So today we talked with astronaut Randy Comrade Bresnik, and he is very active on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. On Facebook, he's NASA astronaut Randy Comrade Bresnik, on Twitter @AstroComrade, and on Instagram also @AstroComrade. And you can follow him on any one of those accounts. You can actually just search Randy Bresnik, and he'll probably pop up. He's verified on all the other accounts. And he shares pictures of his experience on board and some images of the Earth, so please follow along. If you want to see the whole journey of the International Space Station, that's where he is right now, that's also on all of those platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. On Facebook is the International Space Station page. On Twitter, @space_station, and on Instagram is @ISS. Just use the hashtag AskNASA on any one of those platforms, and you can submit an idea to the podcast, or maybe ask a question, and we'll make sure to address it in one of the later podcasts. This podcast was recorded on May 4th, so May the 4th be with you. It's probably way too late for that, but that's okay. We're recording it on May 4th. I'm really in the mood. Thanks to John Stoll, Alex Perryman, Pat Ryan, and John Streeter for helping out with this episode, and thanks again to Mr. Randy Bresnik for coming on the show. We'll be back next week.